edition of You Can Get There From Here. I'm Dr. Joe Moore, Chair of the Department of Communication and Digital Media Production at UCM, and it is my pleasure every week to sit down and visit with some of our alumni, those who graduated in digital media production, those who graduated in communication studies, and even some of our students who received their Master of Arts degree. Today, I'm here visiting with Noah Burroughs. Noah received his master's in communication at the University of Central Missouri and is now project manager for Lego Systems, Inc. Yes, the Legos that you love to play with but hate to step on. Noah, good to have you with us. How you doing today?
I'm great. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're so glad to have you with us. So take us on your journey. What brought you to UCM to study in the master's program?
So in 2019, I was wrapping up with my bachelor's degree. At the time, I was doing some crazy hours. I was working 2 part-time jobs and going to school. And a lot of the things that I was hopeful to stand out of the crowd with wasn't really clicking for me. So I had a sit down with my manager at the radio station that I was trying to go full time at and flat out asked that question. What is it that I can do? And not necessarily getting my master's, but they gave me some pointers on things that I maybe should focus on and different levels of communication that I could expand myself in. So I started looking for colleges. And I knew that with my hours, I wanted something online. I knew that with both my jobs being part-time, I wanted something affordable. And I had kind of a schedule of classes that I felt that I needed to take, and UCM fit like a glove.
Outstanding. So, you talk about you were working at the radio station, you were trying to get full-time, and I think we see that a lot for students who want to work on a master's is they may be working in television or they're working in radio or they're at a production house and they like the work they're doing, but climbing that ladder isn't going quite as quickly as they would like. Maybe there were some skills that, whether they're durable skills or the technical skills that they need to enhance and build on. And they find that, going for that master's degree, that graduate degree, that little bit of extra seems to fit the bill for them. Is that kind of what you were looking for there?
Yeah, when I heard that that was going to be the option and the thing that could help me the most, then I was all in. I always wanted to continue education. I didn't actually have intention of stopping after a bachelor's, but exactly to your point where it hadn't worked out till full time yet, so I started to have some doubts. So it was very reassuring to just know that I was almost on the other side of that hill. And with a little bit of luck and magic and timing, it ended up working out.
And you, when you were working on your undergraduate, you were up in Connecticut, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
I got my associates from Manchester Community College. So started, very locally. There was an iHeart station I was an intern with. Everybody that I was working with there had higher education, so I took that as a sign. I got my bachelor's from Eastern Connecticut University. And then when I had that one-to-one with my manager, I expanded my horizons and went online to UCM.
So how did you find the online program at UCM?
I was coming up on graduation and knew that it would be easiest to follow the path of just making sure that I stayed in for the next semester. And if it was going to be another school, that I had kind of all summer to figure it out.
Okay.
So around the time that I'm wrapping up finals, I start reviewing a bunch of schools online. Obviously, I was looking locally first, up and down the kind of eastern border, so that way, if there ever was a reason that I needed to go, or if there wasn't a program that was fully online, and it ended up working out that at that same time, I got moved onto the morning show. And so now my day was significantly, structured around that, where it was wake up early in the morning to be on air by 5 a.m. And so I started looking for online programs and I started reading reviews and I found UCM and through all of the reviews and everything that they had said and the classes matching perfectly, it like I said, it really did fit like a glove.
Was it the online part of it? Was it the classes that were offered? What was it that really caught your eye?
I, between both of those, and I can't undersell the cost. The overall flexibility that it offered, the boxes that it checked off that could help me not only with radio, but at the time, because I was unsure about going full time, it offered me a larger route to maybe work more with the digital team, to work more with the social team, to just kind of expand what exact form of communication I was doing. And again, between the cost, the reviews, it checking all of the boxes, it being online, and I could always, submit things at night, and there was just a little bit of a different structure, and I didn't have to make it to class all of the time. After looking into it a little bit more, I decided to be a mule.
Excellent. Well, we're glad that you did. So what you talked about, you could be a part of the digital team, part of the social team. You were working in radio. Maybe you weren't sure if that was the route you wanted to continue going. What did you do for your research? What was your focus while working on your master's?
When I started going further into it and started looking at all of the different forms of communication, we were just around, uh, crawling towards the election. And on that morning show, it was a political morning show.
Oh,
So I had this whole new world of communications management, PR, really broaden the spectrums of, oh, I could use radio, but still touch on more specific mediums. And so reviewing through what UCM had, I mean, I was able to take classes that focused on specific issues that were very high at the time, where I got to go through women in media studies and really understand some of the political climate between those. I I use that to fuel my thesis of kind of the imbalance of how people see communication, and I focused it around political rallies and saying, is communication kind of being downgraded to entertainment, or does something like radio and standard television and or excuse me traditional television like news stations still serve a purpose? Like, is it all TikTok, or are people watching CNN? And UCM like allowed me the resources to look further into that and to prove that even though I was in radio, it felt uncertain. And it wasn't until I really started to look into numbers and, everything that the school provided as numbers wise, listeners, Nielsen ratings, et cetera, that it really clicked that, oh, we are doing something here. When you do it day to day, you kind of space out from it and forget it. But when you start studying it again, you're like, oh, I do make a difference in this.
yeah. And now we are 4 years later. We have another election coming up, and we're still asking those questions with as TikTok's gotten bigger and X has done whatever it has done. And I'm still the Facebook generation. My kids are like, Dad, nobody's on Facebook anymore. I'm like, yes, they are. I am, and we still matter. We're still asking those questions of how communication affects life and how it plays in elections and whether it's entertainment or information or what is it. So you were kind of on that cutting edge a little bit when you were working on your master's degree. That's great. So then you go through, you finish up your master's degree. Take us from there.
Yeah. So after uh, a lot of rewrites, admittedly, to find the right balance to basically say, I've been a morning show jockey that does the whole sound effects and soundboards and funny little skits, and I've been the on-air morning show person that sits down and has real political conversations about budgets. Um, Walking out of college, I actually was talking to iHeart still. At that time, when I had gotten moved on to the morning show, it was just kind of filler. Um, it ended up working out that they wanted to make that role full time, and they wanted it to make it a production manager on top of it. So I was able to take not only the skills that I had just recently learned from UCM and studied into, and gotten a better grasp on some larger world issues in communication, but now I was getting a chance to get a role that would be influential enough within the radio station that could kind of determine the future of it. And I started filling in for that role, and it was going really well. And it was a full-time position, and things started to change and happen. But unfortunately, that journey took a turn because just before the pandemic, iHeart filed for bankruptcy. And unfortunately, the new guy was the last in and was one of the first ones out.
Yeah, but it looks like you landed on your feet. You're able to take your education, you're able to take your experience and apply that in another area with a beloved company. So take us from there.
So now I'm in a conundrum. I, recently just went through all of this, and I had what was my dream job at the time. I always wanted to work in radio. Um, but I had to make a pivot. I would either have to move to a much larger market and figure out a budget for myself. And, at that time in life, that wasn't really a great option. So I needed to look for other companies that were around. And one of the things that that role in radio was doing was taking all of the ads once they were recorded and being responsible for getting them onto the station to run. Lego at the time happened to be testing a role to see if it would be worth it to have somebody do that for television commercials. And it turns out that it is a small world after all, because I applied for it. And somebody that I used to work with at iHeart, who knew that I was going for higher education and that I was doing all of these things at the radio station, um, spoke up for me. And it helped me stand out. And it gave me a leg up in the interview to be able to talk to some of these larger things, because Lego does take their role in the world and children's lives very seriously. So they like everyone that's there to kind of exhibit a similar model. So it kind of helped get me in the door, and that test turned into a permanent position. And it's been growing from there. We've continued to see multiple years of success. So although I thought I had my dream job once upon a time, it turns out that sometimes the grass can still be greener.
That's one of the things you learn in college, isn't it? Is to be resilient and to overcome obstacles. And man, it looks like you landed on your feet, and that's great. I'm so excited for you. You are now a project manager, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so when I think of a project manager, my mind immediately goes to construction and the person who oversees the building of the house or the factory or the store or what have you. What does a project manager for Lego systems do?
So that role, was kind of plug and play and very data driven. But there wasn't really enough to fill 40 hours of work every week. So one thing that we started adding in was, at the time, we were doing campaigns that were referred to as tacticals. And what it was is a larger team globally will come up with the idea, and they'll film the commercial, they'll make all of the banners, but there is a team that activates in local, so across America, that activates all of that in malls and at events, and make sure that those commercials do get onto Nickelodeon. So they started putting a little bit more of that into my workday, and eventually our office turned into one of the ones that make global content. So now I play a role through the entire system where instead of coming in as the closing pitcher and making sure things got delivered, and then, transitioning into a reliever, I'm kind of still in the middle. Now I'm in the entire ball game with them. And so right in the very beginning, project will come in, we'll have an idea of new sets that are coming out. And instead of laying the groundwork and building a building, we build a project. We decide if it needs videos, if it needs banners, what is the best way to reach our audience? What is our audience? Like we start asking these hugely broad questions and we work across marketing and strategy teams and with designers in tow to kind of say, the idea that you're pitching isn't realistic, or maybe, or the idea that you're talking about is way more money and time consuming. So my job is to kind of wrangle those cats and build that project and have a deliverable that turns into a commercial on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or even in video games.
So you're talking about an undergrad and professional experience in radio where you're building your communication skills to then getting a master's degree that takes it that next step where you're really talking about research and audience analysis and critical thinking. And you're able to put all of that together to work for Lego, where in 2023, you won a pretty cool award for, was it Disney's Toy of the Year? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was one of the first projects that we had just taken in. And in in 2023, Disney was really ramping up their D100. They're turning 100 and it's a big deal. And for it, they are, kind of pulling out all the stops. And we had been working very closely with them on some new IPs to see what could be new and exciting to release. And we had started the year with a black and white dedicated Steamboat Willie set. And we were going to work our way all the way through the Up house with balloons
Oh,
and Kevin and
nice.
everybody on it. And throughout the year, we built a D100 dedicated campaign and we started doing little teasers of balloons and some shots of Max or other dogs. And when we released the Up house, it was one of the most successful selling toys of that year that we ended up winning Disney's Toy of the Year award in honor of our partnership and then through the conversion of sales.
Had you seen Up at that point?
It had been a while. I had to brush up and watch it again for the project, but it was still
Part of the
everybody that I
research. Yeah, part of that
yes,
research.
everybody that I had worked on it with, had small kids that still loved that movie or they remembered that movie from when they were kids. It was it was really great. And to work on a campaign with a company as large as Disney on an event such as big as or as big as them turning 100, it was already fun and wild and crazy to begin with, but then to know that we did something that was so critical to the business that we ended up getting honored with an award was really humbling at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so exciting. Well, we're down to the end of the episode, and so I always have a couple of last questions that I want to ask all of our guests because you've been out there, you've done it, you've worked from that undergrad, you've been in the industry, you came back, got the master's, and were able to apply all of that. What is one piece of advice that you would give to a current UCM student studying communication at University of Central Missouri? And what is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody thinking about coming to UCM for their education?
Absolutely, having been on the receiving end of those same kind of conversations, I can say that it is, of course, an important acknowledgement of skills and test taking and dedication to the craft. And when you're in it, and you've been in school every day because most times you're going to college right after high school, and it's all you do, and you kind of just treat it as second nature. There's a lot that you're in passing getting out of it. And so for somebody that, is maybe either at that crossroads of where am I going? Why am I doing this? Is this going to pay off? It will. You are getting a lot more in passing, and in the moment, just the anxieties of life are heavy. And so UCM could play a role very easily, just like it did in my life, where I didn't know what I was doing in radio. And I was very nervous about continuing to move on. And the advice that I got was to broaden my skills. And the best way to do that was college. And then, as I mentioned, UCM is just a great option for that, especially for communications. Everywhere that I have talked to since, it took me a few interviews before I landed Lego. Everywhere that I had talked to had asked me about my degree and what I did. And I talked about all of the different projects that I worked on. And again, when you're in it, you're like, this report's due at 11:30. Like, I guess I
Yeah.
got to get around to doing it. It does pay off. And as silly as that seems to be like, you're just brushing off your education, like the stuff that you are getting in passing impacts your day. I didn't know that I would ever be able to manage a project. I didn't know that I would really ever have any of these skills. But from the moment that I started working in college on group projects and meeting deadlines and understanding what I could and couldn't afford in school, all of that passively got applied to exactly what I do now.
Well, no, that's great. I'm so happy for you. It looks like you're doing some great things. I'm thinking about what's the next Lego set that I want to buy. I didn't play with them when I was a kid, so I was glad I had kids because they all like to play with them, and Dad might have built few too many of them. So, good luck to you. Keep up the great work. We're proud of you, and thanks for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. Remember, you can catch every episode on our YouTube channel through the UCM Media Network. That's youtube.com/UCMMN. You can also listen to every episode on Spotify. Special thanks to Jake Mager, who created our theme music. This is Joe Moore reminding you, you can get there from here. Have a great day.